Brakathu, Brakathu Yahweh, Brakathu Yahweh Shai, Brakathu Yahweh, Brakathu Yahweh Shai, Brakathu Yahweh, Brakathu Yahweh Shai, call Haloyim Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai, Bashem, Rakadash is no digital epistle to the 12 tribes of Israel. You know, double honors to the men that's labor that we entered in. You know, evil Eve, you so evil, bro. You know, you see how the Israelite women you know, we see how the Israelite woman destroyed Pegasaurus Rex, but this at the same time, you know, she could have literally been a stripper. You know, she could have not like been a stripper in her past life or whatever. You know, but Jake Lily could have potentially try to find her as a stripper and try to pull her into the truth and make her this wife and show her this money and you know, Jake. But you know, the Israelite woman's destruction. Yeah, so bring it. Just just get what you get out, bro. Get be stoic and you know. But Israelite women hate the truth, man. You'd almost be better just putting it.
Like I said, this is gonna be a brief, quick little live. I just wanted to, give my, I just want to give my story basically on why I'm no longer a Hebrew Israelite. I haven't been for quite some time, but I just wanted to tell you all because I know still a lot of people that follow me and people think that I am. I don't know why, but they do. So I just wanted to briefly go over it and just let you guys know why I'm not. This is not bashing. Short sounds so appropriate given the topic. Facts. However, I'm not bashing any Hebrews or anything like that. It's cool with it. I don't think that you need to lie in order to perpetuate your belief though. Paradigm crew. Just like, okay, I could kind of go for it, whatever. Anyway, Flash, I started keeping Shabbat, whatever, because I lived with my mom. I really didn't have a choice. And so when I went off to college, I took a Hebrew, Islam, and Christianity class. No, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity class. And I got introduced to, Hebrew language and just little things. And I was kind of like, oh, you mean Jesus' name isn't really Jesus? That's like an English translation. And all this kind of stuff that my mom had been telling me. And I was just like, oh, it was just kind of making sense for me a little bit. And because I had kind of grew up keeping Shabbat, I just still did it or whatever, just a little bit, not too much because I was in college, right? It was a little while, but I was kind of doing it still. And
I was kind of doing it. I was still in college just a little while. She going into college, she pushing these people into these institutions. If you tell Eve that you're not sending your daughter to college, she's not gonna be with you. You know, she could get a trade. She could get a trade, learn how to build houses. She could find a husband and build houses and live almost a dead minuscule life.
then I started my spiritual journey. And I had the quotes here because it really wasn't what I thought it was. But anyway, I started, just like being like, okay, what about my health? Which is why I went vegan. And then I was like, what about my health? What about who I am, my history, things like that. And instead of just like asking, I would ask my family, but I was young, so I really didn't ask too many questions. But instead of like going and really grilling them about who I am, I just was like, let me go and, let me go into research what my mom was talking about, right? Because I was already influenced. I was already anybody's like belief or whatever. I'm just being real. So then, fast forward, I decided to do it for myself. I was just like, it kind of makes sense. I don't want to be Christian because I don't want to, like worship this Jesus guy. He looks nothing like me, and as a quote unquote melanated sister, as a black woman, whatever terms y'all use these days. But as a woman of, very deeply pigmented skin, I was just like, I don't want to worship no Jesus that don't look like me. Like, that don't even make sense to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just doesn't make sense. So I was already on the bandwagon for it. And I just kind of fell in deeply into it because I was really looking for that identity of who I am and, who I was. Because like the term black is not specific enough, because really black is an admixture. Even though in my opinion, majority black people are majority African. That's just my opinion. I ain't saying everybody, but majority from my research.
This is my opinion. So is she talking about Indians or Elam or is she's talking about um she's talking about the Israelites? But in my opinion, clearly you didn't read. She went to college. This is what happened. We didn't do none of this when we went to college. We were stupid. You know, if someone said, "Hey, go teach a class about your history," run a class and give them information about your history, fucking can you teach them? But now you could. You know, Second Peter 1:20. Knowing this first, no prophecy of Scripture is for any private interpretation. They know, I got a proper relationship with the Lord. Like, we see where this goes.
Say what you want. But, not saying that people don't have Native American or, white descendants, because I know I do in my bloodline, but I'm just speaking majority, right? So I was just like, well, and, telling me all this stuff about, dreams she had, all this kind of stuff. And so I was just like, oh, okay, so we're like Hebrew or Jews or whatever, on her side and stuff like that. And that's literally how I started to get into it. So that was like my introduction to it, just through my mom and just kind of like the in and out. You're not a Moor? No, I'm not a Moor. I do not claim that. That's so funny because I just had a dialogue with a Moorish science guy. Whew. Anyway, so, but no shade to the Moors.
I mean, but she said I don't claim the more, but she blocked. But black means more. Man, I got a clip I could use. You know, So you're talking about all this history. She told most black people, why aren't you claiming that? You know, I'm not saying we don't claim that. Talk to a brother. You claim the more, that's lame. You know, we don't claim the ethnicities uh, that are people with under the world. We recognize that as part of our history, but she should too. To go and show you more. I mean, the brothers is off, but to go show you even more of most of our brothers from Africa, man, that's just a narrative. And just Africa was just a spot where brothers was refugees in. Just like saying, oh, most black people are in the Americas, just based off the slave population type shit. You wouldn't say that.
like who I am and all that kind of stuff. And then, it got to a point where I got older and now I'm like 25, 26 or whatnot. And I'm starting to I'm out of college and I'm back home and I'm starting to go to these like congregations with her and her husband at the time. So who used to survive that convo? Didn't I survive with such? That Gullah Geechee is not a nation. That's not a nationality. Anyway.
False prophets, also the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you who privately shall bring damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that brought them, brings themselves to destruction.
Who quote unquote knew the language. I'm using quotations because at the time he did not know the language, and I'm gonna tell you why later. But I came into contact with a guy who claimed he knew the language and was like, yeah, the Bible's written in Hebrew and everything, and I knew that, but it never really clicked really before. But this time it really clicked with me, and I was just like, oh right, like English is a translation. That's not really what the Torah was written in per se, right? At least not the Old Testament, right? That's not what it was written in. And so I was just like, okay, so the language is like the key, and I started to just like go on this, and then, as I'm going to these congregations, you're meeting different people. And when I say I know the major key players in the Hebrew community, I know the major key players in the Hebrew community, okay? And this is what's going to make this so.
What does that mean? Like they're no, the major players in your debate community. Even when people say that in the world, what does that mean in black community? Like we all just come together and there's one hit. You really should be saying the nation then. Because if there's one community, but then it's because Jake be coming in the ball periph. Oh, I went. There's so many outside, outside of shit. But the true men, the true men have separated from that. You say in my grifter community.
This was gonna make this T strong, and this is why it's so damaging because they don't know what they're talking about for the majority part.
Romans 10:14. How shall they call on him whom they have not believed, and how shall they believe in him who they have not heard of? How shall they hear him without a preacher? How how shall they preach except they be sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of them that preach the gospel of peace. That's not what you've been talking about. The gospel of peace. None of that. It's all been about debate and basically you just a Christian. You know, these niggas talking about let the Hebrew Israelites. And they use never anywhere. But how beautiful of them are the feet that preach the gospel of peace, and glad tidings of the good things. You know, but they have not obeyed the gospel. For Isaiah said, "O Lord, who have believed our report?"
And all that kind of stuff. I don't need that. I can literally translate and read the actual text. So we'll get there. So I'm competent now. That's how I can talk this shit. But anyway, so I'm meeting all these people, and I don't know if y'all ever been introduced to that or in that lifestyle or whatever. But like they're like, oh, you got these people calling, they have this like confrontation about the name of God or whatever, right? And in the Bible is written YHWH, right? But some people pronounce it Yahuwah. Some people pronounce it, Yahweh. Some people say it's not either. It's Ahaya. Okay, so people have all of their own doctrines and beliefs as to what the name is and how you pronounce the Messiah's name and all this kind of stuff, right? And so I started to like listen to these debates online, and I was like a part of some of them in the congregation, or whatever, right? And so I really just started to, I really just started to see, well, kind of not necessarily see, but I started to get into like that life or whatever, that community, and I started to be like, okay, I need to really learn the language. And so I thought that I was learning the language because initially, I'm not gonna call his name because I don't want to put him out there like that, but y'all find out who it is. But initially, I was told.
I'm sorry, brothers, man. I know I'm an alien with this, bro. But it's be so annoying, bro. Listening to you people talking, be getting you heated. First Titus 2:9, in like manner also women be adoring themselves in modest apparel, shamefacedness, sobriety, not with boiled hair, gold, pearls, costly array, but which becometh women, professing godliness in good works. Let the woman learn in all silence with all subjection. But I suffer not a woman to teach, nor to usurp authority, but be in silence. So they can cover her head. See, they always come and do this, man. Cause they want to keep the nice and big you say ambiguity. I'm probably messing up that word. They want to keep it ambiguous. They want to say, oh, this one I'm no longer a Hebrew Israelite, but they don't necessarily deny the bloodline. Just like Ringo, just bro, you was never in this. Talking about, oh, I believe no. It's just basically these were my base values, and then I tried to delve into them, but I was never really rooted, and neither were the men who were teaching me. And now she goes back into the Ashkenazism. So she could cover her head and do all this. So why don't you uncover your head? She's showing her arms. She's trying to show her appeal. Like in the video, she looks pretty, but this was like a few years ago, and all them dreads and shit, and fucking pushed her hairline back on. So then she looked like 10 years older in the other videos. So
the paleo script is a script, not a language though, but the paleo language is the language and all this kind of stuff. And the ox head, the aleph is the ox head, and the bet is the what is it, the house or the womb, and then the gimel is like the camel, and dalet is basically that the letters of the Hebrew language are actually pictures that denote something deeper, like a much deeper meaning, right? Which is BS. It's totally made up, but that's what
Paleo Virtual Museum. The Canaanite alphabet is a pictorial and then an alphabetical script that originates from the 19th century BCE, represented in the inscriptions of Wadi El Hol or El Hol Valley in the central Egypt Sinai. Scattered inscriptions in Palestine is directly derived from the Egyptian hieroglyphs. That's what they believe. I don't know, you know. They too you know, this according to this source, it is directly derived from the Egyptian hieroglyphs. Dang, I got some oil in my eyes, but the Wadi El Hol inscription 1 and 2 were discovered in 1993 on the same cliff rock, approximately 1 meter above the ground in distance, and 1.2 meters between them. And two inscriptions are dated to the period 1900 or 1850 BCE, based on the adjacent hieroglyphs and hieratic inscriptions. You know, I just looked up in ChatGPT. You looking at the shorty cap, but we see she pushing this
was going on in the beginning because that's what these quote unquote Hebrew teachers were saying. Anyways, I started to be like, well, okay, I need to learn the language. I came across this one guy, very huge in the Hebrew community. Y'all don't see him on Sarnetta, y'all don't see him on the Dagger Squad with Garfield and everything. Y'all don't see him everywhere. He's huge in the Hebrew community, and at one point in time, I called this guy my friend, right? Who I no longer speak to because he's a liar. So I'm just keep it that way. I'm keep it that way. But anyways, he was like, yeah, I'm gonna teach you the language, and I'm gonna help you learn the language and all this kind of stuff, because at that time I was positioning myself. I was a trainer, biomechanics trainer, and I was into nutrition, and I was vegan, and I was positioning myself kind of like in that quote unquote conscious community. You know what I'm saying? Like I was positioning myself in that way. And so this is why I was learning the language, or call myself learning the language and all that kind of stuff, and just like going to these debates and being. And this is
see how the debate demon have taken people, because ultimately this is up to faith. You know, and these people hop into debates, they be hearing all these different doctrines instead of being rooted, man. But the true man, scriptures call the scriptures tell you debaters not going to inherit the kingdom. So that's who you've been around, and that's what led you to where you are. That's where you are at. You know.
I knew a lot of these, Hebrew community guys and all this kind of stuff. This is how I knew them, right? Because, like I said, they came to the congregations, and then I started to learn the language, and then I followed them online, and then I started to just like we just started to talk, and then I started to do videos and stuff like that, not teaching Hebrew or like that, but just showing that I'm learning the language. Really, I was just learning to pronounce it, because the people who called themselves teaching me, or the person who called himself teaching me, didn't even know the language himself. Okay, so anyway. Mind you, at this point, I've gotten into the whole like Hebrew thing through my mother. Decided to do it and practice it myself. I'm like 26 at this time, right? And I decided to practice it myself. And it came a time when my mom actually was just like, she introduced me to the idea that like, maybe because she had, I don't know, heard or read something or whatever, but she was like, well, maybe, maybe Jesus, like the quote unquote Messiah that had supposedly come already, isn't the one that they're talking.
So this Christian, this Christianity that her, basically had a Christian foundation. She didn't even know anything. She could just, oh yeah, that's why I love being Hebrewism. You don't even have that locked down. Okay. If maybe if you pick one, and she had a strong belief on one, maybe, and if she didn't believe that was the Messiah, I'll rip wholeheartedly. It was an Old Testament Israelite, and you let the truth is what. Bro, it sounds like you're nonsense. You just find like brothers just find a different cultural vibe and aesthetic, and that's still what she's doing now. And even as so she can read and understand she's supposed to cover her head, but she can't read and understand she's not supposed to be teaching. And even as they didn't retain God in their knowledge, they gave God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do things which are not convenient to them, because none of this will earn her salvation. And this is going to keep a good brother away from her. At least in this video, she looks decent. In other videos, look like she got 10 years on him. Them Shiva Jadas pulling back that hairline, or maybe she got the Alizar, and that's why that's why she got that wrapped up. Being filled in all unrighteousness, fornication, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, debate. The debate, deceit, malignancy, and whispering, backbiters, haters of God, uh, despiteful, proud boasters, inventions of evil things, disobedient to parents.
About in the Bible, it was like this whole thing, right? I don't want to confuse anybody, but you just got to go with the rhetoric here, whether it makes sense or not. But she was just like,
without understanding, covenant breakers. Oh, how do you deny it, bro? She's breaking the covenant without natural affection, and implacable, unmerciful, knowing the judgment of that power, that they which commit such things worthy of death not only do the same, but have pleasure in them that do it.
Basically, you don't need the New Testament, right? You just need the Old Testament, basically, is what she was pushing me towards. That's not what she believes now, but at the time, that's what she was kind of like suggesting. So, I kind of was just like, oh, that kind of makes sense. And I just did away with the New Testament, and because really in my mind, I was just like, well, if the New Testament is based on the Old Testament, then I really need to know what's in the Old Testament.
And that shows you what it says: eat the whole, eat the little book. You know, you know, you know. When we found the true brothers, man, we had the foundation built on the new scriptures. I mean, on the Old Testament. So she just, exactly, she's a plantation Christian with a Christianite with a Hebrew twist. She coming in there unrooted. Oh, let me not put away let me just go into. First of all, you can't even understand the Old Testament without the New. But brothers were built up in depth on both, and that's how you gotta do it. Precept upon precept, here a little, there a little, line upon line. Uh, Ezekiel 3:4-1. Moreover, he said, Son of man, eat that thou findest, eat this roll, and go speak unto the house of Israel. Open thy mouth, because he has eat that roll. And he said unto me, Son of man, thy belly, thy belly to eat, fill thy bowels, fill up your stomach with the word, and with this roll that thou give thee, then did he eat it, and it was in my mouth as honey for sweetness. And he said unto me, Son of man, go and get thee unto the house of Israel, and speak unto them, speak with them my words unto them.
You know what I'm saying? Like the New Testament, that's cool and all that kind of stuff. Little things change, but if the New Testament is based on the Old Testament, then I need to know the Old Testament. I need to know that like the back of my hand, because these are where the quote unquote commandments come from. Because if you're not familiar with like Hebrewism, they believe or they submit to the idea that you need to follow these laws, statutes, and commandments to the T, right? So that you can quote unquote have eternal life or save your soul, whatever that is, right? So I was just like, okay, I need to learn the Old Testament. And at that point, I had gone back and forth between what's the real name of God, what's the real name of the Messiah, all this kind of stuff. People going into the quote unquote Hebrew and all this kind of stuff, right? And I was just like, you know what? I am done with everybody trying to tell me what to do. I'm not that kind of person. I need to be self sufficient. So
to usurp authority, to be self-sufficient, that what the scriptures define it. And if we go into the this is witchcraft. you know it tells you no prophecies for private interpretation. you know
I was like, you know what? The first guy who initially like introduced me to the language and all that kind of stuff, I stalked him on Facebook. Now I knew him personally, and I asked him for books and stuff like that to learn the language, but he never told me how he knew and how he learned for real. So I was just like, okay, I stalked him on Facebook. I went through his comments and I started to see who he was interacting with, and I started to see certain brothers that would really like go into the language, right? So I clicked on one of them brothers, and that's when I met the Paradigm Crew, right? And that's when I started to learn biblical Hebrew by an academic scholar who's been in the game for over 16, I believe 16, 20 years, something like that. Plus, he's in the halls of academia. Okay, he's not some I taught myself Hebrew scholar or whatever. So anyway, that's how I started to learn the language. Now, as far as like before that, just a smidge before that, I called myself learning the language, but really I was being
He learned from Amalek. You know, like James Brown. I got the degrees. You know, that's why it's funny when you see how Esau works through everything, through political policy, whatever. It's the same how Eve works. Cause they made that pact in the garden. Same way, James White was. I got them degrees. I got the degrees. Like, oh, he really learned from Esau. So we're finna see. She talking all this big shit about the Hebrew, but basic research could go through. You need teachers. As much as you're supposed to, even check everything that the teacher say. Don't take what the teacher say. Do your own work because you need to be able to reteach it. Even if what the teacher's saying is true, if you just hear it and then when you try to spit it out, you're not gonna have it broken down. You're not gonna understand it. You're gonna choke up.
taught like the gematria and the esoterics. You know what I'm saying? Like the aleph is the number one, and if you add this letter with this letter, you get.
It's funny how she's calling that esoteric, but it's them brothers who be into her. Chose the Hebrew be them. Really be getting into the metaphysics and changing language. Just symbology, but it's like you're saying all this, but that's literally how every culture works, bro. Because her problem is she's really trying to make all the Hebrew. At the end, you're nothing like. She's an American trying to apply the American mindset to everything. Everything that she's saying is American. I forgot what I was talking about. Let me rewind a little.
Before that, I called myself learning the language, but really I was being taught like the gematria and the esoterics. You know what I'm saying? Like
okay, so every language you go to China that's character based. You know, each character has an animal attachment or an image attachment or symbolic attachment. So if you're gonna learn Japanese or Chinese, these are either Hebrew or Semites. I can't remember it necessarily at the top of my head, but so they have a lot of their languages are really Hebrew. You know, it's basically broken Hebrew. The heathen reapplied it. So a lot of these things that we see backwards, like if I go to Japan, I'm gonna have a headache reading everything left to right, right? Or is it right to left? Yeah, right to. I'm gonna have a headache reading everything right to left, or like all of the Asian languages, they're right to left. In American, it's left to right. But these are Hebrews or Semites. You, you know that that have a lot of the same concepts. That's why when it was talking about the Tower of Babel in the Hebrew, the Shemites were closer to sticking to that way, even if they weren't necessarily of the chosen line. Even if you know, like Ishmael doing a lot of wickedness and he not following the Lord, but he's sticking onto a way that's similar to not really, but kind of similar to our laws, and our customs, where they go into war with you, some kicking out the central banks, China kicking out the central banks,
aleph is the number one, and if you add this letter with this letter, you get this, and all this metaphysical stuff. I was learning that type of stuff, and I thought that I was learning the language. I thought that all that was a part of learning the language, but I was not. It was a lie. So what happened was I started to learn how to read, and not just read, but translate biblical Hebrew. That's what happened. I learned how to read, and from that moment, I was like, you know what? Let me go back and look at all of these beliefs and doctrines, all these verses that everybody used to, uphold these specific doctrines.
So Haras is so prideful. Haras is so prideful that she thinks that she could come and rewrite. She could just come and translate. She's just learning as it goes, and you're gonna see her. She when she's thinking about, like, she's explaining something about the past tense in Hebrew. She really got to think about something. But there'll be people who really were raised up speaking the language with their people, and they went and go translate this, and you think that you could come and translate it? Bitch, you're prouder than the white man, bitch. Bitch, you're prouder than um that's the 11. That's the 11, bro. But this bitch prouder than what's that white man's name? John Calvin. You know these taking out Bibles of the book. I've been taking out books of the Bible because they weren't even confident enough in their translation. These niggas wicked.
I went back and I saw there was no devil, there was no Satan in the Old Testament. There's no Satan in the Old Testament. Okay, the only two instances you have of the word Hasatan or Satan, which means adversary in Hebrew, is the first one you have is in Numbers when I believe his name is Balaam. He's the person to go on that donkey to curse the children of Israel, and there the God of Israel sends this angel to stand in front of the donkey. and stop the donkey and to stop the donkey to stop the man from going to curse the children of Israel. But the word that's used for that angel is hasatan, which means adversary. Something to note, right? And that quote unquote adversary was in favor of the children of Israel. So that was like, whoa, mind blown. Because what do you mean there's no devil in the Old Testament, right? That makes no sense.
And that's the problem with debating and all this. You don't have a sound doctrine. That's why you need teachers, right? That's why Jake's just trying to hump between debate and debate and debate and pick which truth they like.
I really grew up with this, not only in Christianity, but I was
But she told you she really had no foundation, and maybe she wasn't even among the Sakari because at least they were sound at one point, ish. But you didn't know that. This is not the first thing because Satan literally means the adversary. So and Satan is an angel of the Lord. So the Lord has right hand angels and left hand angels. But even the right hand angels do evil. They judge Israel, but that's still righteous. All Lord's judgment is righteous. So on the left hand, you have evil angels that do evil for the sake of good. You know, it's saying judge your enemy, you're blessed. That's good for you. You know, but when this prophet goes out to curse Israel, and the Lord said the angel to be Satan and adversary, because Satan literally means adversary. Yes, it's Satan not as such a concrete word as the Christians use it, of course, but it doesn't make him not a person, right? Cause she's talking about because it's proper noun, because it's a proper noun. Just because Satan is not a proper noun does not mean it doesn't refer to a person. Yes, in that verse, it's not literally. I mean, that could have been Satan, but being Satan to being an adversary, because the word literally there is adversary, and it's how Satan because these words act beating, because Satan literally means the adversary, you know. And then the next one she's going to talk about is Job, when Job's literally talking to Satan.
I was just thinking this as a Hebrew like 2 days ago,
Or
So that blew my mind. I believe
I'm sorry, the sons of God, Satan talking to his brothers.
the other instances in Job when he's this quote unquote entity is going to and fro, whatever. The deity says, hey, what are you doing? He's like, I'm just going to and fro. And then he's like, have you tried Job? Have you tried Job or whatever? And there, his name, you would also see adversary or Hasatan there, but it's not in some demonic like I'm trying to make you quote unquote sin and all that. That is not how it is.
Let's read this stupid ass bitch, bro. Stupid ass bitch, bro. Job. Job 1 1. There was a man in the land of Uz, his name was Job. He was a perfect man, upright, one who that feared God and eschewed evil. Okay. He would give his sacrifices, Job 1 6. Now there was a day that the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord Yahweh, and Satan came also onto them. So now there was a day that the sons of God came to present themselves before Yahweh, and Satan came also among them. So he's dealing among the congregation of the gods, man. Satan deal with the other. No, he was kicked out of heaven. He was da 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 da. You should have been knew this. That basically means you was basically in a void place. You were nowhere between Israelite. You were just in a void between Israelite and Christianity, and you had no foundation. And the Lord Yahweh said unto Satan, "Whence cometh thou?" Then Satan answered the Lord Yahweh and said, "Going, oh, whence comest thou? Where you come from?" And Satan answered the Lord Yahweh and said, "From going to and fro in the earth and walking up and down it." And the Lord Yahweh said unto Satan, "Hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth? He is a perfect and an upright man that feared God and eschewed evil." Then Satan answered the Lord And say answered Lord Yahweh and said, doth Job fear God for naught? Hast not thou made a hedge uh, about him and about his house and about all that he has on every side? Thou hast blessed the work of his hands and his substance and his increase in the land. Everybody who couldn't believe in God when they up and they rich. You know? That's basically the idea of a Christian because they really want to just do whatever they want and then come serve the Lord after they achieve. You know, commit all the sin, whatever they need to do to get rich, and then come to the Lord. You know, so mm, but put forth thine hand now and touch all that he hath, he will curse thee to thy face. And the Lord Yahweh said unto Satan, behold, all that he hath is in thy power, all, only upon him put not thine hand. So Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord. So he can enter the presence of the Lord. He's doing the work of the Lord. I even called this woman out about it, you know. she and she said, what'd she say? Let's go back.
So that blew my mind. What are you doing? He's like, I'm just going to and fro. And then, he's like, have you tried Job? Have you tried Job or whatever? And there, his name, you would also see adversary or Hasatan there. But it's not in some demonic, like, I'm trying to make you, quote unquote, sin and all that. That is not how it is.
And the story is literally about Satan going to and fro from the earth. Literally could go from the presence of the earth to the Lord and tell him, hey, see this man that you blessed, that you love this man and he loves you, you blessed him. Hey, test him because if you take away everything he has, he will curse you. Right? And the Lord says, okay, that's a trial of the elect. Um, so so clearly he's really going around judging people, you know, condemning people, tempting people. So she's saying this nonsense. Yes, is he this being this an evil adversary and equal to God? No, but Satan is doing the work of the Lord.
So that blew my mind, right? And then the second thing was this lie that was going around. The second thing was this lie going around. I believe that's who I think it is. The second thing was this lie going around that like the transatlantic slave trade was what is it, predicted or whatever in the Bible, right? There's this guy going around saying that, right? So and it's very easy to find out who he is. I'm gonna let y'all do a little.
So what is he? Do what? Take off your hat. The transatlantic slave trade was in the Bible. So did the curse of the Israelites end? Yeah, so was there not a? Who even knows what this means, bro?
Do that little Easter egg kind of y'all. But he's going around saying that, oh, you can find, you can find the transatlantic slave trade. It's written in the Bible and all that kind of stuff. Well, no, it's not. Okay, Deuteronomy, what is it, 20, oh, goodness, what is it? 28:60 or something like that. I don't know. But wherever it talks about the ships going and, to and back and forth from Babylon, whatever, that's not what it's talking about. Okay, and so basically, I just went throughout this, Old Testament. So, I was just going.
Hmm? 1 Kings 10:21. Man, I'm sorry about you, man. I'll be I'll be better. I'll mute it. all the kings Solomon, all the King Solomon's drinking vessels were of gold, and all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon were of pure gold. None were silver. None. Straight gold. None were silver. None. And it came accounted of in the days of Solomon, for the king had a a navy of Tarshish with the navy of Hiram. Once in 3 years came the navy of Tarshish, bringing gold, silver, ivory, apes, peacocks. You know. And I mean, when we arguing with a brother, man. we was talking about, I think was America being over. I remember necessary topic, and he was like, man, there ain't no gold in the Americas and dude. Oh man, who you talking to? And not like for real, like beef. But the brother's like, okay, hey man, okay, come spit game to me, come spit game. And we go break it down. How Columbus, but I'm a Levite, so you gonna come to say, you gonna come to me and talk, oh, America ain't got no gold. Man, I remember the first day of high school history class. Niggas went into Columbus, man. That took the energy out of the room, nigga. This took the energy out of the room. You know? So it took every 3 years. It's a year and a half there, a year and a half back. Shipwreck cost billions of cartage, for centuries. The San Jose galleon laid on the bottom of the ocean floor, but now it's the center. I'll just what did you say center? I don't know. Is it the century? Is that word? Of a custody dispute with several parties all claim all staking claim to its riches. It was on 8th of June 1708 that Spanish galleon San Jose erupted in flames on the coast of Carthage, Colombia. The ship had been at battle with the British since late afternoon that night. The 62 galleon had disappeared in the Caribbean Ocean, which sunk nearly 600 people and up to $2 billion worth of gold, silver, and jewels. Because these were going to the same places that were called Orpheus. Christopher Columbus was going to the same places. Fuck, man. No, it's hitting me. There's so much stuff I could add to this video, man. I hate this bit more. You know. The amount of gold stolen from the indigenous people in America is difficult to determine precisely, but historical records indicate that vast quantities were taken, particularly during the time of the European colonization, which when the Spanish arrived in the Americas in the 16th century, they began extracting gold and other valuable resources from the indigenous peoples, particularly in regions like present-day Mexico, Peru, Colombia. The Spanish were particularly focused on the gold of the Aztecs and the Inca empires, which um, both of which had vast reserves of gold. In addition to the direct looting and of gold, the colonizers enslaved indigenous people, and forcing them to mine gold, often under brutal conditions. The Spanish also used the infamous encomenda. Sounds like a comedy. Oh no, the encomenda system. Encomenda system involved in forced labor of indigenous people to extract precious metals and other resources in their land to scale the theft that was enormous, with estimates suggesting that Spain shipped around 181 tons of gold, around 5.8 trillion ounces of gold from the Americas. From the Americas during the 16th century alone. However, the numbers are speculative and the exact amount of gold is impossible to verify. The losses, though, have been devastating consequences for the indigenous communities, both in terms of material wealth and broader impact on their cultures and societies. So the system where Spanish settlers were granted the right to the legal right to extract forced labor from indigenous peoples in specific areas. I'm not reading verbatim. The individuals granted to right of this right expected to provide protection to this. So basically, we get to force you for labor, and then you gonna come under our Catholicism. Damn, that's hard. That's hard. Uh, though the intent of the form was a mutual benefit, the system was often exploited. We get to use you for forced labor to steal your resources, and you get Catholicism. Yeah, that sounds like that sounds like some mutual benefit. You know, indigenous people were subject to harsh labor such as forced mining, farming, and other forms of exploitation. It was effectively legal in many countries. I mean, effectively legal slavery in many areas of America is leading to the abuse and the significant population decline of the indigenous due to overwork, disease, and maltreatment. You know. Then they brought Jake over here. I mean, they brought the Southern Kingdom over here. The idea of the ancient biblical land of Ophir being located in the Americas is a theory that has been proposed by some researchers and French historians, but it's not supported by the mainstream scholars. But you know what it is? That Yiddish Hebrew and archaeologists. But in the Bible, Ophir is described as distant, wealthy land from the King Solomon ships brought gold, silver, ivory, apes, and exotic goods. You know, and the location of Ophir has been long debated. Various theories have been proposed over the centuries. Below, there are some key sources and arguments that have been made by those who suggest that Ophir might be located in the Americas. Biblical description: the Bible mentions Ophir in the books of Kings and the books of Chronicles, describing it as a place known for its great wealth and source of exotic goods. The ship of King Solomon were said to have sailed to Ophir to bring back precious metals and other treasures. The specific geographical location is not given, leading to numerous speculation. Where some theories that pre-Columbian transatlantic contact proponents of the idea that Ophir was in the Americas argue ancient civilizations, including the Phoenicians, Egyptians, or Israelites, had transatlantic contact. Some of them did. Actually, the Phoenicians and the Israelites did, because the Phoenicians, per se, Hiram, was coming here, sailing, getting these goods. They left the Olmec heads. And then, you know, so, some of them came with the Northern Kingdom when they came here, but they died out. You made transatlantic contact long before Columbus's voyages. They suggest the King Solomon ships may have sailed across the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean to the Americas. Some theories of ancient maps and artifacts have evidence the contact between the old world and the new world. They are have point to ancient Hebrew inscriptions such as the Inca stones, which were believed to depict the old world figures in the Americas, out of place artifacts that they argue could have suggested some pre-Columbian contact. Some arguments are based on the significant amount of gold found in America's particular regions such as South America, which is known to the Incas pre-Columbian civilization for its vast gold. Some theorists speculate that Ophir is rich in gold in the Americas, especially Peru and Brazil, fit this prescription. Prominent proponents of this theory, Glenn V.A. Baker, argued that Samanic ships could have traveled to the Americas, specifically the Gulf of Mexico, suggesting um, the Aztec and the Maya civilizations may have had a connection to ancient Israel. Two authors and researchers which wrote about pre-Columbian contact between the Old World and New World, suggesting that the ancient Hebrews reached the Americas. Some believe that the American cultures of Mesoamerica, Mayan, and Olmec might have been contacted with the Israelites. That their civilization were influenced by old world cultures. The mainstream scholar census that is that idea of over being in the Americas is highly speculative and not supported by any concrete evidence. Most scholars believe that Ophir being was located in Saudi Arabia. And when we read prophecy, we know that won't work. I didn't want to read the rest of it. Critics point out the evidence for chance oceanic contact. Where we want to go? The Paleogenetic script, Middle Bronze Age writing system is considered one of the earliest alphabetical writing and ancestral systems of both the ancient South Arabian script and Phoenician, which led to many modern alphabets. The Proto-Phonetic script, the Proto-Sinaitic script was the first alphabetical written system developed somewhere between the 1900 BC and 1700 BC. People speak, So she acted too wise, you know. Isaiah 29:14. Therefore, behold, I will proceed to do a marvelous work among the people, even the marvelous work, a wonder, where for the wisdom of the wise men will perish, and the understanding of the prudent man shall hide. So she out here jerking these niggas, man, who have an Edomite, who get support through Edomites. They have an Edomite foundation. And in the Lord, Numbers 22:22, and the Lord anger kindled against him. The angel of the Lord stood in the way for an adversary against him. So the word Satan means adversary. So Han Satan is the adversary. You understand? So let's go look in the Hebrew. So it's funny, the dumbass bitch talking about, oh, it's different. It doesn't even say the Satan. It doesn't say Ha Satan, the Satan. It says Satan. So in the way, Satan against him. So it's telling you, it doesn't say the Satan. It just says Satan because Satan is a word, adversary. So if someone's going to curse the Lord sent an angel to be an adversary to the person who's an adversary. Lord sent a Satan to a Satan against Israel. Nothing to trip about. Cause like if I'm calling these ops and shit, I'm like, oh that's my ops and ops. You know I got a lot of ops, but sometimes I'm talking about the op. You know, I'm not talking about op about my enemies in general, but you know, if I really have an arm, if I'm really talking about the ops, you know, I'm really talking about the ops. You know, I'm gonna have beef with these niggas, but these niggas kill my friends. I'm trying to kill his friends. Ain't that shit? Ain't that sick in the world? Ain't that sick in the world? That's how niggas think. But they love E. Mm-hmm. So, second Ezra's. And those 10 tribes which were carried away by prisoners out of their land into the time of Hosea, the king, whom Salomon Nassar, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and carried them over the waters, so that they came in another land. But they took counsel among themselves that they should lead the multitude of the heathen. So, not Saudi Arabia, them niggas, East Africa, places where people always been. But they took counsel among themselves that they might lead the multitude of the heathen and go forth to another country where no man ever dwelt. You know, when the Lord said, when Solomon said, the Lord, I mean that worked too. But when Solomon sent, uh, you know, when he sent the Phoenicians to come and you know, to get what they needed, they didn't dwell there. You know, imagine you having your own cities. You know, Solomon gives you cities in Israel. You have a, you know, you go dwell in a place where no one ever been. Ain't no need. Solomon got peace on earth that they might there keep their statutes, which they have never kept in their own land. Which they never kept in their own land. They entered through Euphrates, you know. So they just tell you they went through the Euphrates River. They went around. They went around Africa. And, you know they came. You know, uh, through Euphrates by a narrow passage for the Most High. Then shewed signs and held them straight that they and held them still the flood that they might pass over. For though a country was for the for that country was a great way to go, a year and a half. So one half plus one half equals three. So that's the same distance where Solomon went there and back. So just going one way. And wait, how long did it take Columbus to get here? Year and a half. So it's like if you out of spirit, and once you find that out, you hear a year and a half. That should stick to you. Especially if you went to school in America. If you got the American education system, that year should just the year and a half should just stick to you through the spirit. Another great way, year and a half. The same reason is Asarath with another land. You know, did I read that the Proverbs 9:13, the foolish woman is clamorous, she's simple, knoweth nothing. Did I read that? I think I gotta read it again. I think I gotta read it 15,000 times until she stopped teaching. Just kidding, she's a woman. She's never gonna stop teaching. Isaiah 22:18. I will roll you up tightly like a ball. I will throw you into a large country, which is larger than America, bro. I mean, compared to other countries, bro, like, man, it's crazy. Bro, there's so many videos I could piece together with this. That, they will die, there you will die in the chariots, and there the chariots were, you were so proud of, will be your disgrace in your master's home. You know, sweet home, sweet chariot, man. You know, come forth to carry me home. You know they're gonna carry you, but it's your disgrace because you gotta eat this punishment. You know, that's there for your salvation. You know, the chariots are there for your salvation. And you just gotta watch them. Your vehicles of salvation. They just gotta watch you in your captivity. That was harsh. You know, people say, "Oh, where was God? Where was God during slavery?" Watching. You're trying to shame the Lord. Why don't you have shame? Because you weren't saying, hey, where's God for the I don't, them bitches might post about it on the interwebs, but how many of them said, hey, where's God for them boys digging out the cobalt? Where's God for the Russians being shelled, ethnic Russians being shelled by Ukraine? You ain't never heard none of that shit.
Back and forth through these verses, basically through the foundations of the doctrine. And I was going back and forth and translating. But now I can translate, so I'm going back and translating from what I'm reading in the King James translation, and I'm translating directly from the biblical Hebrew, and it just don't say that. It just doesn't say that. And that's another thing that started to blow my mind. Once I saw that all the doctrines that uphold that Hebrew Israelite ideology are false, as far as like all those dogmas and stuff that they believe in, it's not rooted in actual biblical Hebrew. You can only find a lot of that stuff in the translation. And so, I was just like, wait, you mean to tell me that it's called parsing, basically when you are translating verses from one text to another language, right? When you're translating the verses. So I'm translating from biblical.
You Ecclesiastes 12:12. Further by these, my son, be admonished of making many books. There is no end of my studying awareness to the flesh. uh Second Titus 3:7, ever learning, but never able to come into the knowledge of the truth.
Hebrew into English, and then I'm looking over at the King James, and I'll be like, whoa, that don't say that. Like this doesn't say that at all. And then why did they even translate that like that? And then I started to understand that no, like the King James translation is a political agenda. It has nothing to do with trying to translate the word of God, right? That's not what it's about. And so basically that just like blew my whole paradigm. The whole even hell not being a thing like in the Old Testament, it just blew my whole paradigm. And I was just like, whoa. And then when I would go back and talk to other people and be like, hey, like this doesn't say that in biblical Hebrew, learn the language and everything like that. They would be like, oh no, you can learn the language, but you still gotta have the spirit, all that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, wow, that's so sad because you're literally saying that you're basing your.
You can learn language, but you do need the spirit. It's better to have this. I mean, obviously, you need to know a little bit of the Hebrew. I mean, the Hebrew you need for salvation, at least bare minimum things, you need a little bit of Hebrew to understand, but the spirit comes first because we're not bold enough. We're not arrogant enough to say, oh, we just gonna have the language and we gonna get, the brothers that can speak it well, there are brothers who can speak fluently. Who got so good at it, they could learn fluently and they can learn the variations to speak to the Israelis. You know, but the apostles that know very well, they wouldn't even say that they're bold. That these people think they're so arrogant that they could go translate the Bible, and they're learning the language, especially through Amalek. But they think they'll be better than people who translated it and who were born speaking the Hebrew, custom wanting to translate it. You know, Ephesians 4:11. He gave some apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, sent away, some prophets preached before evangelists, preach the gospel, some pastors to lead the brothers, man, to the right way, and teachers for the perfecting of the saints, for the work of the ministry, edifying of the body of Mashiach. So where's the Bible? Oh, you go come translate. You go translate the Bible. Bitch, bold. She should translate, get rid of that Siva Jata so it don't push your hairline back. She was like, man, Eve be so fighting to put on the turban. Eve be looking beautiful with the turban on. Take it back. She looked 30. She looked like she aged 10 years, bro. And two, maybe maybe she always been look old, but she just ain't want to take the turban off. She pushing that Yahweh, but Yahweh's the god of the other deities. What was it? You know, the Moabites. the Moabites, Chemos was the national god similar to the Hebrew Yahweh. Um, so these people had Yahweh. These people had Yahweh in their pantheon. You know, when these people bring back these specific names to mislead the people, in the Bible says the heathen are dreadful of the name. So if the people who stole the heritage are using the name, that's not the name. You know. But you know, this is referring to the middle passage, man. Man.
Whole life off of what you're reading in this text.
Acts 4:13. Now when they saw the boldness of Peter and John and perceived that they were unlearned and ignorant, they marveled, and they took all the knowledge of them that they had with Yahweh side. You know? That's what she said. Oh, these unlearned men, you know, those weren't the men because they're debating. Why can't you go on the highways and byways for free and you go work to push your ministry, not make brothers pay and use all this to monetize and he's supposed to be your enemies. You're supposed to be pushing against this word, and y'all damn near closer friends than the people with the same beliefs as you. You have less divisions amongst the big community than you do in the Israelites, man. You know. So she's talking about, oh, these people really learned how many years in the school, but you don't. She'll scoff at you saying the Hebrew has vowel points, has no vowel points. Dude, we know this is which is that's not in the Dead Sea Scrolls. You know, for the Jews require a sign, but the Greeks seek after wisdom, and this is her. That's why we need to have faith. You know, but she has faith in herself. She has faith in Esau's system. So, bro, she never came to the truth. Oh, she stopped identifying with her heritage, man. You know, it's not just about the heritage. You know, let's come to the Jews' religion. You know, but we preach a Mashiach crucified. Onto the Jews a stumbling block, get onto the Greeks foolishness, but onto them which call both Jews and Greeks Hamashiach the power and the wisdom of power, or the power of the power of Hamashiach the power and the wisdom of power, because the foolishness of power is wiser than men, and the weakness of power is stronger than men. So why for ye see For ye see your calling, brethren, how that many wise men after the flesh, or how not many wise men after the flesh, not many mighty, not many noble were called. See, so she's talking, oh, he got all these degrees. He's not called in the truth. Man, you say, oh, so you're basically saying, it's not divine. So what are you teaching? It's basically super Christianity. You know? So who are those people? What happened? Are the Christians of God over? When was the last time Jake went in and say, what's the point? What have we been doing for the past 2,000 years? What have we been doing? So are the Israelites no longer slaves? What are you free? What is the mission of you? Whatever, bro. We don't need to shit. That's stupid. But power hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, to found the niggas who, oh, I wrote 20 years, all these years for school, but you're still pushing vowels in the Hebrew? God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty, and the base things of the world which that are despised have power chosen, yeah, and things which are not, to bring not to not things that are. So the men that are unestablished in this world, the ones who don't have the, as much as men who've been studying the Hebrew as long, there's been men who actually been laboring in this truth just as long, pushing the word. So he just been studying language. Niggas been pushing salvation onto the brothers, man. She talking that Gullah Geechee, you know. So she recognizes that more than Israelites. She'll claim that more than Israelites, man. Gullah Geechee, or then Creole, a person born in a country but is not indigenous to it. You know, like you had Creoles in Africa. How many? A lot of people were Creoles in Africa, but she don't know about that history because she barely studied. Think about it. She went from vibe to culture. When did she really have time to learn the history and truth? You know, she spent all her time learning this the Edomite Yiddish Hebrew, the Eliezer Ben Yehuda. You know, to raise up, to bring up. So you're Creole. You were brought up by Esau. Took you out your land and enslaved you. And Spanish word. Fuck. You'd be like, oh, we're from France. You know. It does not mean mixture of race. It denotes a person either European. Now, rarely. So niggas, I'm leaving. We talk your Creole. That's barely been talking about niggas. It's barely been referring to Negroes. You know, what's any at such a short time. So she talk, oh, we Gullah Geechee, double double doll. But it's barely even applied to black people. You see some you know, like when you watching like swamp people watching swamp people, watching these niggas kill alligators, you be feeling the spirit like, oh, I feel like that's Jake. You know, he's more than a hunter. The way he do it spiritually, it's Loki like these niggas are setting up sacrifices. You know, to be like, oh, that brother, I feel like that brother Israelite, even though he paled that Creole, that's been really Creole, been really meant for the light skinned niggas, or the light skinned Israelites who the Israelites who appear to be way longer than it's been given to these niggas, man. And she's done being Hebrew Israelite, but she won't put away her blackness. That's the same thing as Ringo, man. These niggas are evil. Ecclesiastes 42:12. Behold, not everyone's beauty, because she looked good and she was saying shit. And you go look at her other videos and stuff. But that's why the brothers be telling you don't trust every fat head wrap and a fat ass nigga. Don't be trusting that shit. I may have added the second part, but you know what I mean. Um, and sit not in the midst of women. You see, and she's sitting here like she's saying some real deep shit. She's just trying to overthrow your faith. Dolagichi was a descendant of enslaved West and Central African. But how does that mean when the Gullah when that term applied to Creole, it barely even denotes a Negro. So it goes to show you the nonsense of that shit. It's basically, hey, there's more classification. Let's make this more for you niggas, man. Strip away your identity and whatever.
But you don't understand that you're reading the translation, so you're reading what somebody says something says. You're reading hearsay. It's like that telephone game, right? Where somebody starts something and at the end it's something different. That's literally what you're doing.
But she doesn't realize I'm teaching hearsay, and that's literally what she's doing when she's teaching. She learned from someone else playing telephone. She thinks
Read
she's
the translation, aka King James. And if your quote unquote teachers are not starting you off with teaching you how to read biblical Hebrew because it's different than modern Hebrew, if they're not teaching you biblical Hebrew, then they are literally like mind mapping you and brainwashing you. I don't care how good of a person they are. I don't care what their intentions are. That means nothing. If your soul and your spirit and your whole life is dedicated and predicated upon you knowing what's in that book, but they themselves don't want to learn the language and then they don't want to teach you, then that's a problem. So for me, I was just like, you know what? Now that I can read and I can see what this is for myself, and
and what she calls biblical Hebrew, she also has vowels in it. So fuck is she talking
and
about?
even past even I'm laughing if he's still on here because even past like once you can see what the book is really talking about, it ain't talking about what y'all think it's talking about. You know what I mean? And that's when you really start to be like, oh, this is actually pretty interesting. But that's a whole other discussion, it's a whole other thing. But my thing is just once I realized that people were purposely remaining blind, and it's not that it's just like, oh, it's just one or two words different. No, like
If people are remaining blind, is she talking about Esau taking over the world? Is she talking about the MOTB? Is she talking about anything that's actually happening in the world? Because prophetically, we are proven. If we reading that out of context, we gonna keep doing that because the prophecies have been hidden. The the the, the history have been hidden. Do I need to hit her with a DNA test? We don't need that shit. Fuck a DNA test meant to me, man. Once I said niggas been in truth for like 4 years, fuck a DNA test gonna prove to me. Niggas tell you, oh, you could be from this place. You could be from this place. You could she didn't say this, but you could be from you could be Cuban. I mean, I was gonna say Manasseh, but you could be Cuban and now could mess up everything. You know. But hey, it's the spirit.
The biblical Hebrew literally reads a different story than the King James version. Literally, it reads a different story. So if the people that are quote unquote teaching,
And like she acts like the King James. There are many Bible versions before the King James. That's just the best one. That just works the best with the Hebrew. You know, that just works the best with the Hebrew. I'm sorry about that. My shit was just being quiet. I'm sorry about that. I just feel like it's just not really picking up. But
are not preparing you by teaching you how to read biblical Hebrew, then they are playing you. No matter what their intentions are, no matter who they are, how good of people they are, they're playing you and they're playing themselves because they can't read it. They don't know what it says, and that's why it's hilarious because people be like, oh well, this book, oh this verse and this verse and this verse. I'm like hilarious because it doesn't say that for real. So congratulations, you played yourself. And I don't mean to say it like in a condescending way. I'm saying it here because I'm jokingly playing. But when I'm talking to people, I don't do it that way because but it's just like you are willing to deny your whole family. You are willing to go online and listen and be a part of.
and she's talking about this. Oh, you played yourself. Well, I'm not meaning to condescend, but you played yourself. You're really being condescending. You're trying to act like you're nice and you're da da da. You're condescending. Oh, you're willing to cut your whole family off. And you should cut your family off, let you know this dark path. But what do you mean cut your family off? We had the curses before we in the truth. At the end of the day, most of these people, Jake out here really just be trying to buy their family's love, man. Your family mistreats you, and then they basically worship poor treatment. And whoever gives the worst treatment to a parent, I mean, regardless of race, they treat the best that person trying to buy your love, and you always get thrown under the bus. You know, it's not like nigga, go look at all these celebrities, man. These parents ruin their lives. A lot of these celebrities are successful because their parents didn't care about them, and the child had to take instead of investing in the kid. A lot of these parents just threw a lot of the support they're supposed to be getting, and they expected their child to give that support without even investing in them. So you talk about throw away your family. A lot of these rappers tell you, man, I'm paying my mom's bills and drug money. Lil Wayne telling you his mom made him get a shorty pregnant, bitch. When I think her husband died and she was missing somebody, bitch, you get pregnant, bitch. You're not the millionaire. If you get pregnant and she just didn't want to deal with a man, she ruined her son's life. Her son a perpetual man child, raising get daughters getting breast implants and shit.
These 3, 4, 5 hour lectures, you know what I'm saying? And you're willing to do all of that to uphold this ideology that's
Shit is not a trade, bro. It's just not a trade. People think, oh, we lose everything. No, it's just because things that we realize. And honestly, we really realized it before too. We were just lying to ourselves because this is the things that we want.
but you're not willing to learn how to read the very language that you say your soul is predicated upon. Wow, like you say your soul is like based, the saving of your soul is based on this, but you're not willing to learn the language.
But she's saying, she's saying all this, but okay, you understand these. So you're talking about the King James. There are many versions way before them to say the same things that tell you about your family, whatever. But we're going to the Old Testament. We're niggas' family. The main reason we betrayed. Go look at David's family. Nigga, family backstabbing because it mean nothing outside of this Christian man. If really your family don't have the same doctrine as you, if they ain't like, then you can do with them really.
Wow, that's sad. It's very sad. Just like I had, and people always do the whole like, you say all this about. I'm gonna go back to the comments and everything. Let me keep doing this, but. And people will be like, oh well, this is the whole spirit thing, right? Watch this. People will be like, oh well, I asked God or the Most High, the Creator, Yahweh, whatever. I asked the Creator for its name and everything like that, and it revealed to me it was, X, Y, and Z. Like some people say Yahuwah, some people say High.
But that's literally how they got their language with the vowel points and shit. With the Eliezer Ben Yehuda.
Whatever. So this one person in particular, 12 plus years, you're going around saying Yahuwah, and then somebody shows you that that's not how you read it in the grammar. Somebody literally shows it, and now you're saying Yahweh.
But Yahweh is not the name either. What's the difference between the A and Yah and the E in the Wawa? What's the difference? What's the difference between where? Can you show me the vowel point? Because especially you're talking about not the modern, so maybe you're not speaking to Eliezer or Ben Yehuda, but you still have vowel points, and I don't get that. You're saying don't have vowels, so you're saying the yo. What's the difference? There's no difference. But all this shit is bullshit. This is the face of the proud woman. You know.
So what happened to this? You can know how to read it, but you gotta have spirit. You know what I'm saying? Like that don't even make sense. It doesn't. So
Because obviously neither one of it's obviously how the name Yahweh. But these vowel points that weren't even added. They weren't even added to the common era.
it's like I said, me coming out of Hebrew Israelitism or whatever was really just me learning and becoming literate in the actual language that it was written in. And that's sad, right? And I'm not saying I down it or anything like that. I don't down the Torah or anything like that.
So doesn't it sound like she's literally down in it? It sounds like she's down in everything.
I have a different association with it. I enjoy it for what it is. But when I became competent and I had the eyes to see, I was just like, I was able to actually make a choice for myself, you know, because I grew up Christian, so I really didn't have a choice there. When I stayed with my mom, she was Hebrew Israelite. That also affected me because it just added on to the whole Christian thing, but everybody black, you know what I'm saying? And that affected me. And so it was kind of like I never really had a chance to choose what I really felt and what I was really gravitating towards and what was really me. I just didn't have that chance. So when I began to learn biblical Hebrew and I started to translate it, I was just like, yeah, this ain't me. He'd be like, whoa, this ain't what you thought it was, sweetheart. This is something totally different. Let me go back. I would have put it on. I would have put it on. Like cute crop top that has some like Doc Martens on or whatever. And I walked right by these guys like in these big yellow, I mean golden, purple, not golden, purple and gold robes or whatever. And he like preaching out there like, you know, yeah, you Israelite, and all this, you know, and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just like walking by them laughing like, y'all can't even read what it says. You have a logical, scientific, free mind. Yeah, I mean, it's still a little in prison, I believe. I'm purposely negative free. Do you speak Yoruba language? Not fluently, but I can hold a conversation. I'm still learning. Sidebar, you are just so. Oh, gracias, I appreciate it. The demagogues must hate to see you coming. Oh yeah. Shalom, Lashawan, Hakadesh, all that kind of stuff is not real language. It doesn't follow any grammar rules. And I'll briefly.
See, and look, see how she's thinking like an American? Because if you read any language, if you learn any language, and this is the hardest part about learning any language and thinking any language, but this is why if you learn a language word by word, you cannot speak a language. Because the language has a different grammar system than your language and not the stupid ass grammar system. Obviously, if you go read any language, especially an Eastern language, and we can look this up, no language. I mean, we don't have as many present. These languages don't have as many tenses as Hebrew, because this is a, for lack of a better term, a primitive language. You know, it's a symbolic language. It's a language of high context, just like any other language outside of the Western world. But stupid bitch.
Why? Because when you say shalom, so first off, language has tenses, right? It has gender and number, but it also has tense. So for instance, if I say is, was, and were, you would be able to understand the tense I'm speaking in, right? You would understand I said he is, meaning currently, he was, meaning in the past. But this made up language with Lashawan, Hakadesh, and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't have any tenses because they only use like what, A-class vowels. So everything sounds.
She only use A-class vowels when we know the vowel points were added in the Hebrew. Um, so yes, the Hebrew language, particularly biblical Hebrew, as she describes, has a different approach to pretensing compared languages like English, which have multiple tenses: past, future, past, present, and future. Hebrew is considered a non-tense based language. Hebrew is considered a non-tense based language. Fuck this bitch, man. Fuck this bitch, man. Talking down bullshit. Talking that bullshit on the men in the language of the Lord. She thinks she's making fun of the language that men are speaking. No, she's making fun of the language of the Lord. She's mocking the language of the Lord. What it says: Hebrew is considered a non-tense based language, meaning it does not rely on verb conjugation for specific tense in the way that English does. Hebrew often uses the aspect to convey time and action. Well, I hate this bitch, man.
Same. So it's similar to me being like, he is to the store. He is, he was or she was. I wouldn't say choice for yourself, right? And it's not just you being like, oh, if I don't do X, Y, Z, I'm gonna go to hell, or I'm gonna do this and all that, and I'm gonna do all this kind of stuff, or the devil's doing this to me and all this kind of stuff. I'm not saying there aren't evil forces out there though. I'm just saying that this devil character that people think is in the Bible is not. So it's good to just be competent so that nobody is. You can definitely be an Israelite and know biblical Hebrew, or you can follow the Torah and know biblical Hebrew. You know what I'm saying? My thing is, you need to be literate so that you can make that choice for yourself.
But she's literate in a language that's not biblical Hebrew,
right? And it's not just.
And then she's rewriting the Bible. But you're not going to be literate in the way that you're literate in the language in another world. We're going to need the Lord to give that back to us, man. But see, imagine if we were literate. Imagine if Jake was really super fluent in the Hebrew and just niggas would be coming out with a whole different Bible every week. Niggas would be breaking to the Vatican trying to we need them books, brother. We need to decipher them books, brother. Send this bitch to the Vatican. You know what? Even though women aren't supposed to teach. There's she read somewhere. Maybe it was just the wording that the way the Bible's poorly penetrated. It was saying, hey, we need a woman with a megamine forehead who only wrap her head to hide her forehead, so to take out 15 years. You know, her hair. She got her hairline getting pulled back, saying like King Von. Do all this research. You can't find out what them Shiva Jadas are. But she Gullah Geechee, so she can't let go of her cult. Well, I don't even see. It's like we be talking, and then you really be getting to the depths of her mind thing, like the mind frame. You don't even want to get into it.
You being like, oh, if I don't do X, Y, Z, I'm gonna go to hell. I'm gonna do this and all that, and I'm gonna do all this kind of stuff, or the devil's doing this to me and all this kind of stuff. I'm not saying there aren't evil forces out there though. I'm just saying that this devil character that people think is in the Bible is not. So it's good to just be competent so that nobody's telling you what to do, especially when you believe that your soul and your spirit and your life is based on this. You know what I'm saying? But if someone is in spirit, they speak the language they don't know, but there are some people who translate that. Yeah, I believe that's like speaking in tongues and stuff like that. But when they say you gotta have the spirit, what they're talking about generally is money. You have to put in work. It takes work, right? So that's what I'm saying. Very important to know. Oh yeah, very important to know. Very important to know. I'm just reading through the comments. Did you learn Hebrew from a book or a teacher? I learned Hebrew from a teacher. Okay, a professor at that, and he's in the halls of academia. This guy is a scholar. Okay.
See, halls of academia. This man is a scholar in Esau world, but he can't. He didn't tell you that there are no vowel points in the Hebrew. Which you could obviously is simple research that you can find. That's some new shit. But you say you speak in the biblical Hebrew. It tells you that Hebrew is not a tense language. Oh, dubba 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 dubba, all bullshit. Okay, let's keep going.
So I learned legit biblical Hebrew. No BS. No BS. As a matter of fact, I'm almost done parsing Ruth. So I learned legit biblical Hebrew. Like I didn't cut any corners. I'm not learning any gematria. I'm not learning any Shalom Hakadesh or whatever.
See, I'm not learning any Hebrew. I'm speaking that Greek.
They call, the Lashon Hakadosh, whatever. I'm not learning any of that extra stuff people made up. I'm learning the legit language. Like you could put the Torah in front of me and give me a DDB, and I'll be able to put work in from that, and my paradigm chart, of course, because
yeah, but her ass can't stop teaching though.
I'm not remembering all the conjugations. But the language is so important because it's just like when you're translating, and this is why it's so important that you learn the language. When you're translating, the word is a verb. The verb, right? The verb is conjugated, meaning it changes based on the tense, the number, or whatnot,
so,
kind of stuff, right? It changes a little bit.
So you can see how she gets a whole different gospel of this shit.
It modifies, right? So it's like I said, the verb in English to be, right? I believe it's to be, yeah, to be, and you have is, was, were, that type of thing, right? That's called a conjugation technically, right? It was explained to me is this way, right? So if I have an apple and I give it to you and I say, hey, keep the apple for me, and I walk off, right? And I come back the next day, or let's say I come back 3 days later, and I'm like, hey, where's my apple? And you're like, oh, it's right here. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, dang, the apple's rotten. Why'd you let my apple rot? And you like, you just asked me to keep it for you.
And she's saying, why you let my apple rot? And someone comes back and why you let my apple preserve? Fuck does that even mean? So unless there was a word speaking on the state of the apple being decayed, does that rotten apple become rotten apple did? Because it's no longer a healthy apple? Because it's decayed. It's all bullshit.
Okay? No, notice the word I use is keep. Now, there's another binyan, and I believe it's PL. And it's intensive.
I believe. What do you mean, I believe? You don't get to have beliefs when you're translating the Bible. When you're translating a book and you're telling this is the gospel and you're tripping, you don't get to have no beliefs, bitch. You better be few I believe. There is no I believe. They're talking about faith. Now these are I believes. I'm fluent. No. She just found something that run off with the excuses of her own.
It's an intensive active, meaning it's a process that goes along with it. And when I say active and passive, I don't mean past tense and present tense. I mean active as in I'm doing it, or passive as in it's being done to me, right? So you have a simple active, which is the cause stem, and it's like I kept, and then you have an intensive active, which is like I believe it's PL, and it means I preserved. Those are two different actions. So if I give you that apple and 3 days later I come back and it's right, and I only ask you to keep it, that's a different storyline than if I said, hey, preserve this apple for me. Now when I come back in 3 days, it's still nice.
What the fuck does that even mean? It doesn't mean anything. But if these people are coming with all these rules and she finds someone say, hey, I get to do whatever I want and misinterpret it however this way. A bitch would
What each change is signaling to you in order to translate it properly, you're lost. You might as well throw in the towel. You don't know what's going on, and that's why people don't understand how.
And that's what she says, but her language got the vowel points, which they don't have. And she's talking about the tense when this is a non-tense language.
Important it is to know how to translate these languages, not even just biblical Hebrew, no matter what you are learning, right? You need to know the language because the DNA of the people is in the language. Like it's so important. Yeah, I heard that.
So she's saying the DNA of the people is in the language, right? But she's no longer of the people. So you see what nonsense this makes?
Don't use vowels. I heard one claim that there were no vowels in ancient Paleo Hebrew. He's an idiot. He's lying. The Mesonetic also seems extremely suspect as a legitimate language, but I believe the Mesonetic is a legitimate language. I believe Brother Reggie may be like, I don't know. I've heard that he can read it or something like that. I don't know if he can speak and all that kind of stuff. Only one other person on this live, if he's still on here, that would be able to have that conversation with me. But yeah, I think it is very allegorical. The devil is in us. Yeah, I agree. I'm not saying there aren't evil forces out there though. I'm not saying that. Let's see. Do you believe in other books like the Book of Joshua, Enoch, and man? First off, I don't believe in nothing. If I need to believe, I'm gonna start to question that. I need to see something. And I'm not saying like.
So you see where she at, but what she sees, if you trust your eyes, you can always be fooled, and she's tricked. She don't know shit about the languages she's claiming to speak. But you see these wicked men, they come in with the nonsense of the world, and they come in and heap teachers onto her, and the people who are attracted to them institutions.
I have to see everything as in like it needs to be in front of me like I said, but I need to see some results. Okay, because so but you know what? When it comes to like those extra books and stuff like that. Okay, so this is another thing. When you're learning to read the biblical text, you start to understand that things were not written in chronological order. It was not Genesis or Bereshit, and then Shemot or Exodus, and then.
See, that's what she's saying. But is that what's written in the scriptures? So she's telling you the Torah. It's not the first 5 given to Moses, but her has to be stupid.
What is it? Devarim? No, the third? I don't know. But it's not Devarim as in Deuteronomy, and then Wahikras and Leviticus. It's not in that order like that. Actually, they weren't written in that order, right? I forget, don't quote me on the exact order, but I believe one of those first 5 books of the Torah was written like after the prophets or something like that, or it was written much later, right? And you would think that they were written consecutively, but they were not. And so then you start to understand different writing styles because now you're reading and you're like, I'm noticing patterns as I read. You know, it's just like if you write something and your mom writes you something, you know the difference in style. You know the difference. Okay, I practice Shay. Still learning about my Levi tribe. Don't know enough, but I'm familiar with the Bible itself. Yeah. Well, I would say make sure that you can read biblical Hebrew because, like I said, not knowing how to read biblical Hebrew is literally reading a hearsay. It's reading hearsay. You're playing.
Yeah, but when you're translating a language, that's literally hearsay. So if you're translating something, shouldn't you literally everything you should have should be annotatable, or shareable. You shouldn't even be translating shit by yourself. If you're translating, you should come with a crew. But it's all excuses to her will. So so let's just skate. Let's just skate through the stupid ass bitch, man.
So I know you probably have a narrative that American slaves were forced to be Christian and did not believe in the Bible. I want to show you that not only were the slaves way more intelligent than we give them credit for, but they knew a lot about Israel. I'm going to read these Negro spirituals with no music, and I want you to pay attention. Get away, Jordan. There's one more river to cross, and that's the stream that flows through Bethlehem, called the River Jordan. Pure city, Babylon's falling, to rise no more. Oh, Babylon's falling, falling, falling. Where are you bound? Bound for Canaan land. Oh, you must not lie, you must not steal, you must not take God's name in vain. I'm bound for Canaan land. If they were just so forced to believe in God, why did they know more about Israel than the slave owners? Why are their songs more descriptive about the Middle East than every other white Christian song? Because they know about the Bible before Americans.
My friend.
Evil bitch said this not prophesied. Evil. Nino brothers. They were siblings from Conquistador town. Black interpreters for Columbus. Let's go Louis Torres first. I believe this was excuse me. I believe this was a Levite. Louis Torres was a Hebrew interpreter for Christopher Columbus' first voyage to the Americas in 1492. Louis Torres was born Joseph Yawasab Bon Levi Bon Loya. You know, Harvey in Monaco, Spain, but was forced to convert to Christianity to avoid execution during the Spanish Inquisition. Stupid bitch, bro. Fuck this, I'm studying and you know. So the yoke of iron, it don't mean that. The yoke of iron upon your neck, being taken away far to a nation that your forefathers have not known, it don't.
Thought I'd go and have a look at Jewish literature to see what they say about their origins. And here we see 3 quotes. And the first is in the 1925 Jewish Encyclopedia, which says that Esau.
Man, if all these academics, man, you should have. They ain't worry about the gospel. It's just be a good person. Bro, you're just a Christian, bro. You're a Christian with
Edom is modern Jewry. And of course, this is contrary to what most people believe today, which is that the Jews are God's chosen people because they are the Israelites. But here, the Jewish literature is saying that they are actually from the tribe of Edom, not the tribe of Israel. In the Jewish Almanac in 1980, it says, strictly speaking, it is incorrect to call an ancient Israelite a Jew or to call a contemporary Jew an Israelite or Hebrew. And that's because, truthfully speaking, they're not the Hebrews or Israelites, they're really the Edomites. And also, we see here in the Encyclopedia Judaica that Edomite Jews began to call themselves Hebrews and Israelites in 1860.
Called New World Jewry. It's by S.B. Liebman and the American Jewish Historical Society. He wrote about those who owned and manned the ships, the perpetrators of this mass human cruelty and murder. Quote, they came with ships carrying African blacks to be sold as slaves. The traffic in slaves was a royal monopoly, and the Jews were often appointed as agents for the crown in their sale. They, the Jews, were the largest ship chandlers in the entire Caribbean region, where the shipping business was mainly a Jewish enterprise. The ship.
So how can the number one slave trade that led to the nation being the richest nation in the world not be biblical?
not only owned by Jews, but were manned by Jewish crews and sailed under the command of Jewish captains.
You have a huge community in Africa that they know in tradition that they are Hebrews, that they're from child of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. They know it for sure. You have communities that are running services and prayers by the halakha, keeping Shabbat and eating kosher. They know their roots. Like, you can't argue with them. They're stronger than you. They will tell you who they are. They don't ask you even. And they have the Bible and it's all written over there, and they don't have no problems in life. Except of that we're not able to accept them, to recognize the godliness of the holy tribes that is treasured inside them, their souls. And you have the problem not recognizing your own brother and not understanding that there's a way to let him back in, because we have today all the power to do that.
But he said he let us back in. We don't give a fuck. We ain't trying to be let back in this shit, nigga. We don't need shit. Hey, we got the men. We got the men preaching the gospel, man. nigga, we the true temples, man. we got the Arctic. We got the Barney. I mean, we are temples. You know, we are the only temples we need. Like, you know, kind of joke. They the only temples we need, but you know, we the only temple we need. You know, you got recalling.
We have all the sources, we have the land, we have everything we need, except of the key to our hearts that is still missing.
Yes, you have everything you need. Expect the spirit of Jacob. He might be Jacob, but you know they have everything they need. Expect the spirit of Jacob.
I just asked them if they know that the black people are the real Jews. Do y'all know that?
Yeah, black people are the real Jews, yeah.
So, because a lot, we don't know. They're not telling us.
No, because they whitewash the whole thing down to make you believe that the blacks were, of no significance. So.
And where are you from?
I'm from India.
From India. See, I keep telling y'all, people overseas know who we are. I keep telling y'all, but y'all don't want to believe it.
So many historians believe that Christopher Columbus knew that he was going to a new land, and plus Christopher Columbus had Moorish sailors and explorers with him, and they knew where the Americas were, because when Christopher Columbus sailed off in 1492, remember, they took over Grenada. And when you take over a society, when you take over an empire, you take over their resources, you take over their knowledge, you take over their science, you take over their navigation, you take over their military. And the Spanish, they got access to those Moorish maps in 1492 because the Moors, they had a stronghold on trade. And they're not going to give up their trade secrets. They're not going to tell you where they're getting their products from. They're not going to tell you who the plug is. Once they got conquered, once they got expelled from Spain, now you got all of that knowledge. So the minute they got those Moorish maps, they hit the road.
It was known for slaves to sing Negro spiritual songs such as Kumbaya. Slaves who were brought from West Africa was known to sing the song in South Carolina and Georgia. Kumbaya is said to mean come by here in English, but I will tell you the real spiritual meaning behind these words. The name of the God of the Bible in Hebrew is originally called Yahuwah. The short form of this name is called Yah, which is where we get the phrase hallelujah from, which means praise be to Yah. Also, every prophet mentioned in the Bible had the short form of God's name mentioned in their own names originally in Hebrew, including the Messiah, Yeshua, before they was given their new names pronounced in English. Black slaves were getting whipped and forced to work long hours on the plantations. They would sing out Kumbaya, which means come by here, Yah. The phrase of this Negro spiritual has nothing to do with the English.
It can mean sea, and 321 places it means sea. But yam literally gives you the implication of a sea or a body of water. So you go back. So we have a fleet or unit on the sea, and it says shipmen. We have Enosh, this is the root word, and the word Ania. Ania means ship, men means, we could do plural, but Enosh, the root word means men, shipmen that had knowledge of the sea, right here, with the servants of Solomon. So now we know when we look at this word ship, at least when we have the syntax with this word Enosh, and look in the context of navy and sea, the implication that this vessel, which is abstract, is literally referring to a vessel that is on the sea. Are you following me?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go back. And what I just did was contextual analysis, right? So syntactical lexical is looking for various words, how they syntax. Contextual analysis is reading the whole passage and these various words that you just defined and syntax and how they work together to give you a better understanding. And contextual analysis will also be reading the entire chapter if you don't understand a verse, or you can read maybe the entire book also to give you more context, right? All right, so you got ships. All right, so now we have ships. Now remember, we said ships was feminine, right? We have up there, which means feminine plural. And ships also, again, is the abstract sense of a vessel, something that's used to move something from one place to another, right? So it can mean, in this case, we don't see water. We don't see water here, right? We don't see Enosh or a man involved in steering this ship, right? We don't see the word navy that we looked up there. So this sense can mean anything. It's really ambiguous. It can mean a vessel on the sea, a vessel on the earth, or any kind of vessel, right? So we want to deal with Egypt, right? And shall bring Yahuwah or Yahweh Egypt in ships, right? So he's going to bring us back to Egypt with ships. Read the rest of the passage again, because I want people to see the context, right? After defining the words. So the context is, it says what?
By the way whereof
I spake. Keep going.
Unto you. You shall see it no more.
Slow down. Again. So why the Most High is saying that he's going to bring you back in Egypt ships, by the way that I spoke to you, that you would see it no more again, because the objective was to get Israel out of Egypt. They become a separate nation without having to go back to Egypt for sustenance or anything else. Because remember, the Israelites who was in the wilderness disobeyed, and they wanted to go back to Egypt, which means that they will be putting themselves back under subject.
Yeah, I agree with, I think the crew that she said, but you know, but he's in Yahuwah, so I don't think this is it. Hope this lesson was edifying. Hopefully I can add some Nino brothers in here. We'll show you her nonsense. Brakti Yahweh, Brakti Yahushai, Brakti Yahweh, Brakti Yahushai, call on Yahweh, Shem Yahushai. Now fuck this evil ass bitch, bro. Evil. Evil. You know, translating say that's not the Bible. But just imagine, if that's what they was doing, that's how they read the scriptures to be able to pull out whatever they want, you know, niggas is evil. Call on Yahweh, Shem Yahushai.